In just 6 years, the world was transformed by a conflict unlike any other, a war that pitted nations against one another in a struggle for survival, freedom, and power. From the ashes of World War I, totalitarian regimes rose to prominence, igniting flames of aggression that would engulf the globe. What led to the outbreak of this catastrophic war? How did the Allies rise to defeat tyranny and restore hope? Join us as we journey through the harrowing events of World War II, a tale of courage, sacrifice, and the unyielding human spirit. World War II, a global conflict that lasted from 1939 to 1945, involved the vast majority of the world's nations, eventually forming two opposing military alliances, the Allies and the Axis. It was a war that reshaped the political, social, and economic landscape of the world and was marked by significant events, including the Holocaust, the use of atomic bombs, and the emergence of the United States and the Soviet Union as superpowers. This documentary explores the pivotal moments of this devastating conflict, from its origins to its aftermath. The seeds of World War II were sown in the aftermath of World War I, particularly through the Treaty of Versailles, signed in June 1919. This treaty aimed to establish peace, but instead imposed harsh penalties on Germany, including significant territorial losses, military restrictions, and staggering reparations amounting to billions of dollars. These measures were intended to prevent future aggression, yet they led to widespread economic hardship and political instability in Germany. The nation faced hyperinflation, skyrocketing unemployment, and civil unrest, which fueled a deep-seated resentment among its people. Many Germans viewed the treaty not just as a political agreement, but as a national humiliation, a stigma that would foster a longing for redemption and a determination to overturn the imposed order. In the turbulent 1920s and 1930s, totalitarian regimes emerged across Europe, driven by a combination of economic distress and nationalistic fervor. Adolf Hitler's Nazi Party gained traction in Germany, capitalizing on public discontent to promise a return to national pride and economic stability, employing propaganda and violent tactics to eliminate opposition. In Italy, Benito Mussolini established a fascist regime, promoting authoritarian rule and aggressive nationalism. Simultaneously, Joseph Stalin consolidated his power in the Soviet Union, implementing brutal purges and transforming the country into a totalitarian state. These leaders sought territorial expansion and aimed to revise the post-World War I order, setting the stage for global conflict. The era was marked by aggressive expansionist policies that challenged the post-World War I order. In 1931, Japan invaded Manchuria, pursuing its imperial ambitions in Asia and disregarding international protests. Meanwhile, Adolf Hitler boldly violated the Treaty of Versailles by remilitarizing the Rhineland in 1936, a strategic move that marked a critical turning point in European politics. The annexation of Austria in 1938 followed, as Hitler sought to unify all German-speaking peoples under Nazi rule. These aggressive actions, along with the demand for the Sudetenland, laid bare the failures of appeasement by Western powers, emboldening totalitarian regimes across the globe. On September 1, 1939, Germany launched a full-scale invasion of Poland, marking the official beginning of World War II. Utilizing blitzkrieg tactics, characterized by rapid and coordinated assaults from air and ground forces, German military strategy swiftly overwhelmed Polish defenses. The air raids targeted key infrastructure and troop formations, creating panic and disarray. Just days later, the Soviet Union invaded from the east as part of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, sealing Poland's fate. Within weeks, the once proud nation was decisively defeated, illustrating the devastating efficiency of the new warfare tactics and signaling a dark turn in global history. In 1940, the war escalated dramatically. Following months of relative calm known as the Phony War, Germany launched a lightning-fast invasion of France in May, catching the Allies off guard. The Germans bypassed the formidable Maginot Line by advancing through the Ardennes, where French and British forces were ill-prepared for the ferocity and speed of the assault. The Allies faced a crushing defeat, leading to the desperate evacuation of over 300,000 troops at Dunkirk. Despite this heroic rescue, by June, Paris had fallen, and France was forced to surrender, marking one of the most significant early victories for Nazi Germany. With France fallen, Britain stood alone against the Axis powers. In July 1940, the Battle of Britain commenced as Hitler sought to crush British resistance by achieving air superiority. The German Luftwaffe launched relentless bombing raids on military targets and civilian areas. However, the Royal Air Force, fortified by cutting-edge radar technology and the courage of its pilots, put up a fierce defense. The skies over Britain became a battleground, with brave pilots dogfighting daily. Despite heavy losses, Britain held its ground, and the failure of the Luftwaffe's air campaign marked a critical turning point, signaling that the Axis could be stopped. On June 22, 1941, Adolf Hitler launched one of the largest military campaigns in history, Operation Barbarossa. The German army, bolstered by its early successes, stormed into Soviet territory with over 3 million soldiers. The speed and ferocity of the attack resulted in the capture of vast regions and millions of Soviet troops. However, as the German forces pushed deeper, they faced mounting resistance from the Soviet Red Army. By the time the brutal Russian winter set in, German troops, unprepared for the freezing conditions, found themselves bogged down, and the tide of the Eastern Front began to shift in favor of the Soviet Union. The siege of Leningrad, lasting nearly 900 days, stands as one of the most harrowing chapters of World War II. Beginning in 1941, German forces encircled the city, cutting off supplies and plunging its inhabitants into unimaginable hardship. As food ran out and temperatures plummeted, civilians faced starvation, enduring one of the harshest winters on record. Despite these conditions, the resilience of the Soviet defenders and the determination of the citizens never faltered. The city's spirit of defiance remained unbroken, and through sheer willpower and resourcefulness, Leningrad withstood the siege until it was finally lifted in 1944. The siege of Leningrad, lasting nearly 900 days, stands as one of the most harrowing chapters of World War II. Beginning in 1941, German forces encircled the city, cutting off supplies and plunging its inhabitants into unimaginable hardship. As food ran out and temperatures plummeted, civilians faced starvation, enduring one of the harshest winters on record. Despite these conditions, the resilience of the Soviet defenders and the determination of the citizens never faltered. The city's spirit of defiance remained unbroken, and through sheer willpower and resourcefulness, Leningrad withstood the siege until it was finally lifted in 1944. As the war raged in Europe, tensions in the Pacific escalated to a breaking point. On the morning of December 7, 1941, Japan launched a devastating surprise attack on the US naval base at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. Within hours, the assault crippled much of the US Pacific Fleet, sinking battleships and destroying aircraft. Over 2,400 Americans lost their lives in the attack, which sent shockwaves across the nation. This unprovoked act galvanized American public opinion and drew the United States into World War II. The attack on Pearl Harbor marked a turning point, forever changing the course of the conflict. In June 1942, the tides of war in the Pacific shifted dramatically with the Battle of Midway. Having successfully broken Japanese military codes, the US Navy anticipated the planned attack on the Midway Atoll. In a carefully executed ambush, US forces caught the Japanese fleet by surprise, sinking 4 of Japan's most powerful aircraft carriers. This decisive victory crippled Japan's naval power and marked a critical turning point in the Pacific theater. The battle not only halted Japanese expansion, but also shifted the balance of power in favor of the Allies, setting the stage for future victories. The North African campaign was a pivotal theater in World War II, where British, American, and other Allied forces faced off against Axis troops under the command of Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, known for his strategic brilliance. Fighting in the harsh deserts of North Africa, the Allies struggled to gain ground early on. However, the turning point came in October 1942 at the Second Battle of El Alamein, where British forces, led by General Bernard Montgomery, launched a successful offensive. This decisive victory marked the beginning of the end for Axis dominance in North Africa, paving the way for further Allied advances. In July 1943, the Allies launched an ambitious invasion of Sicily, marking the beginning of the Italian campaign. The success of the operation led to the downfall of Benito Mussolini's fascist regime, but the campaign itself was far from over. Fierce German resistance turned Italy into a grueling battlefield, with some of the most brutal fighting of the war. As the Allies advanced northward, they encountered a series of heavily fortified German defensive lines. Despite the difficult terrain and determined enemy, the Allies made steady progress, ultimately capturing Rome in June 1944, a symbolic victory in their push toward Nazi Germany. On June 6, 1944, the Allies launched Operation Overlord, the largest amphibious invasion in history. As dawn broke over the beaches of Normandy, tens of thousands of Allied troops braved relentless enemy fire, fierce artillery bombardments, and fortified German positions. D-Day came at a tremendous cost, with heavy casualties across the 5 landing zones: Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juno, and Sword. However, the sacrifices made on that day created a crucial foothold in Nazi-occupied Europe. The success of the invasion marked the beginning of the end for Hitler's regime, setting the stage for the Allied advance across Western Europe and the eventual defeat of Nazi Germany. In August 1944, after 4 long years of Nazi occupation, Paris was liberated. As the Allies advanced through France, French resistance fighters rose up within the city, engaging in fierce battles to weaken the German hold. When Allied forces arrived, they were greeted with cheers and tears of joy from the citizens of Paris. The liberation of the French capital was a deeply symbolic victory, both for the French people and for the Allies, marking a major turning point in the war and signaling that the end of Nazi domination in Western Europe was near. The Battle of the Bulge, which unfolded from December 1944 to January 1945, was the last major German offensive of World War II. As the Germans launched their surprise attack through the dense forests of the Ardennes, Allied forces found themselves unprepared for the ferocity of the winter assault. Facing relentless pressure and treacherous conditions, American and British troops exhibited remarkable resilience. Reinforcements arrived just in time, enabling the Allies to regroup and fortify their defenses. Despite the brutal fighting, the Allies ultimately prevailed, marking a significant turning point that diminished German capabilities and hastened the approach of victory in Europe. By April 1945, the Red Army had encircled Berlin, tightening the noose around the Nazi regime. As Soviet troops stormed the city, fierce battles erupted in the rubble-strewn streets, with desperate German defenders attempting to hold their ground. On April 30th, amid the chaos and despair, Adolf Hitler took his own life in his underground bunker, symbolizing the collapse of the Third Reich. Following days of intense fighting, Germany officially surrendered on May 7, 1945, marking a decisive end to the European conflict and paving the way for the Allied victory in World War II. In August 1945, the United States executed a decisive and devastating strategy by dropping atomic bombs on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The first bomb, dropped on Hiroshima on August 6th, obliterated much of the city and killed tens of thousands instantly. 3 days later, Nagasaki faced a similar fate. The sheer scale of destruction and loss of life compelled Japan to announce its unconditional surrender on August 15, 1945. This marked the effective conclusion of World War II, leaving an indelible mark on history and ushering in the atomic age. World War II was a conflict that reshaped the globe, leading to the establishment of the United Nations and new international norms aimed at preventing such devastation in the future. The war left an indelible mark on history, reminding us of the fragility of peace and the necessity of cooperation among nations. As we reflect on the sacrifices made during this conflict, we must continue to strive for a world united in peace and understanding. Thank you for joining Exploral Narratives on this journey through the history of World War II. As we reflect on the trials and triumphs of the past, let us honor the sacrifices made by countless individuals. Their courage and resilience remind us of the importance of peace, understanding, and cooperation in our world today. May we never forget the lessons learned and strive to build a future free from the horrors of conflict. As the dust settled on the battlefields of World War II, a new world emerged, one forged through immense sacrifice and resilience. The lessons learned from this devastating conflict remind us of the importance of unity, understanding, and vigilance against the forces of division. As we look to the future, may we honor the memory of those who fought bravely and the countless lives lost. Let their stories guide us toward a world where peace prevails over conflict and humanity stands together in solidarity. Thank you for joining Exploral Narratives on this journey through history. Remember, the past is not just a story, it shapes the present and guides our future.